Welcome to this Sahara 4 exercise. In this exercise, we will discuss the variables window, what information can be visualized in it or modified, and we will do a quick introduction to the variable creation system. For that, we will keep working with the same project that we have been reviewing from the previous exercises. Go to the edit menu, variables, and now the variables window is going to open. Here we can see on the left side that all the variables are organized in groups, and if we select any of them, let's look for example for oil in monthly production group, we are going to see that all the information associated with the variable is going to be displayed on the right side of the window. Here we have the name, that is how the variable is called, a short name that is mostly used for reports, for example, a reference that is how the variable is going to be shown on the production window, the cumulative, that in the case of some variable, for example oil, they have a different reference when we're talking about the cumulative value, in this case net produced for oil, a k name that is only an internal code of the variable. For options, we have variable type. The variable type can be either data or calculated. In the case of data, the the variable has to be imported directly. I mean, we are not going to calculate the oil production from other variables. Oil production has to be imported for the variable to be filled with information. Otherwise, the variable type can be calculated. In the case of calculated variable, we are going to look for one. Let's say, for example, pour volume in petrophysical data. Pour volume in petrophysical data is calculated, which means that it always comes from other variables. We cannot really import the pour volume as a petrophysical data. Petrophysical data meaning the combination of the well data and the layer data. We cannot import it. It has to be calculated from porosity and net thickness, which in this case porosity and net thickness are both variables that are variable type data. For example, porosity for petrophysical data, we can see that we have to import it, and net thickness for petrophysical data, we can check that it's also type data. So that means that pour volume for petrophysical data is a variable that is always going to be calculated from two other variables that they might be themselves calculated or data, but eventually all the information is going to come from variable type data, because that's the information that we are importing. Then we have the data type. Let's go back to oil in monthly production, just to monthly production. Okay, here. So let's go back to this one. We have data type. That this means which kind of information is stored in the variable. We have here 5 different classes of data type. We have decimal, integer, date, enumerated, or text. In this case, we have decimal. That is the information is going to have decimal values, so it's not going to be an integer, and it's numbers, so it's not going to be either text or data. And here we have the unit group. For example, in this case, liquid production. Let's say, for example, this is a very common flow, or maybe we could call it even a mistake that is quite common. For example, let's say that we have our monthly productions, we have it expressed in barrels per day, for example. Someone wants to modify that and have it expressed in cubic meters per day, for example. They go to the variables window that we have discussed. To the unit window that we have discussed previously, and looks for example, volume. And they say, okay, I want to change the barrels. I want them expressed in cubic meters, so I'm going to change these from, for example, 1,000 barrels to cubic meters. That should be over here, cubic meters over here. So they do this change. We are not going to save it, and nothing is going to be modified. In this case, we are not going to see a modification of the production variable, because that's not the unit of the production variable. Here, if we go back to oil in monthly production, we are going to see that the unit group is not volume, it's going to be liquid production. So if we want to do any modification on how this data is represented, we have to go check in the variable window the unit group and then go to the unit window. And so in this case, units, and we have liquid production. And now these are going to be the ones that are going to modify in which unit we are going to visualize the oil production of the wells. We have barrels, but now we want to see, for example, in cubic meters, as we said. This is the one that is going to modify the the unit that we are displaying. This is useful if we don't know exactly which group of units are being associated with a variable. Continuing with the previous example, with the multi-production for oil, we can see on the right side that we can check how the information is stored, how the variable is represented in different languages, how the name, the short name are called for the different languages that are available for Sahara. And here we can check the keywords. The keywords were mentioned in a previous exercise when we were importing the object information. They are relevant because it allows us, when we are importing information from an Excel file or a text file, to do it quicker. By recognizing immediately if the name of the column is either some of these keywords, they are going to be immediately recognized as the variable that we are importing. For example, if we have a column that is called oil, Sahara is going to automatically associate it with this variable. We can, in the case of this variable, the only thing that we can modify is this information. We can create a new keyword or modify the previous existing ones. Let's say, for example, Petro will be a new keyword here. And now, if we have a column that is called Petro, it's going to be associated immediately with the oil production, monthly production of oil. So we can save it by clicking save over here. And now something important to consider as well is that we can create new variables. We will do more exercises with variable created by users. But just as an introduction, let's just comment that there are two different type of variables. We have user variables and native or system variables. The system variables are all those that are created when a project is created. That are all the ones that are present here on the different groups. You can check it here and here. All these are system variables. But some groups allow for the creation of user variables. Some of them do and some of them don't. For example, multi-production allow us to create a new variable by selecting any of them and clicking on new. This is going to tell us that we're creating a new variable from the multi-production group. And here we can create the name, the short name, the reference for the variable, and create keywords and define if it's calculated, which is going to be defined by an equation that we are going to talk more about later in another exercise, or if it's going to be just data, and in this case we can define keywords for a faster importation of that data. Also the type of the data type, and in the case of variables created for this group is only going to be allowed for decimal, and also the unit group that is going to be associated with the variable, and the color that is going to be the default by which this variable is represented, for example in the production data, in bubbles, and in any other graphical representation. So here we have also how this is going to be associated. For example, if we have, you're not going to use for aggregation, you're not going to use sum in all the cases. For example, if you're evaluating the production of several wells, you will do the sum of the production. But for example, if you want to evaluate the pressure of different wells, it doesn't make much sense to do to sum all the pressures. It makes more sense to do an arithmetic mean, for example, of the different pressures. Same goes for water cut, for example, and other variables. This is the same logic. You have to define which is going to be your aggregation variable, or how the data is going to be aggregated in the case of several wells. So that will be all for the user variables. We will talk more about it later, and we will do more detailed exercises with user variables. But for the moment, it's important to know that you can create them. You can create it either by for variable type data or variable type calculated, that some groups allow for the creation of variables and some others don't. In this case, Molly production allows for it. Um, but for example, here facilities is not going to allow this. The new bottom is going to be gray out because these are variables that are not intended for a user created variable to exist. So that will be all for this tutorial, and thank you for watching.